My name is Garrett Finn, 34 years old, an appliance repairman in Minneapolis, Minnesota. My life has never been glamorous. It revolves around broken refrigerators, washing machines that screech like banshees, and jobs that drag on until the sky is pitch black. But for me, that was enough. That seemingly dull work gave me the feeling that I was building something real, a quiet, peaceful home for my wife and our little boy. That evening, I pushed open the front door with my heavy toolbox still slung crookedly over my shoulder, the smell of machine oil and sweat clinging to my clothes. The job that day had been brutal. An industrial fridge for a client on the outskirts had died completely. I'd spent 3 hours flat on my back in a walk-in freezer, the cold seeping into my bones. Minnesota in November gets dark early. The wind outside howled in gusts like it wanted to rip the night apart. All I wanted was a hot shower to scoop up our 5-year-old son Jonas and sit down to dinner with Kelsey. Kelsey, 30 years old, my wife, a fashion designer. The woman who loves beauty, who loves admiring glances. Even though she sometimes dreamed of a more luxurious life now and then, I still believed that as long as we sat side by side at the end of each day, any hardship could be overcome. But the moment I crossed the threshold, something felt wrong. A tiny alarm bell in my chest warning that something terrible was waiting. The living room light was on, but it wasn't the warm golden glow Kelsey always left for me. It was the harsh white glare of the overhead fixture. She sat there, on the old armchair we'd bought right after the wedding, arms folded tight, back straight, eyes empty in a way that terrified me. No smile, no standing up. A moment later, Kelsey nudged a stack of papers across the coffee table toward me. Crisp white sheets, corners still sharp, her signature already at the bottom. I didn't need to bend down to know what it was. Divorce papers. The word divorce in bold letters hit me like a punch to the sternum, stealing my breath. Kelsey's voice came out flat and emotionless, like she was reading a dull weather report. I want a divorce. I can't keep living with you anymore. I froze. The toolbox slipped off my shoulder and crashed to the floor. Metal clanged sharply in the suffocating silence. I thought I'd misheard, or that it was a joke, or that Kelsey was angry about something and trying to scare me. But her eyes, God, those weren't the eyes of the wife I'd lived with for 7 years. They belonged to a complete stranger. What? What are you saying? We had dinner together last night. She gave a bitter half-laugh I'd never heard before. Right. Last night we had dinner together. Tonight we don't. I put a hand on the table, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Kelsey, calm down. Can we talk? Whatever it is, just tell me straight. I have nothing left to say. She cut me off, voice like ice. I'm tired, Garrett. Tired of being poor. Tired of watching you walk in smelling like grease and wearing filthy work clothes. Tired of counting every penny to figure out what we can afford to eat, buying clothes on clearance, living in this tiny apartment while all my friends have big houses and nice cars. I'm done. Done with a life tied to an appliance repairman. And you'll always just be an appliance repairman. Every word sliced into me like a knife. I took a step back, head spinning. 7 years. 7 years I'd worked like an animal. Night shifts, weekend jobs, sometimes sleeping in the van so I could drive straight to the next call. Just so she could buy pretty things so Jonas could have formula and diapers. I never complained. Never cheated. Never raised my voice beyond reason. And now she looked at me like I was an obstacle in her way. Are you serious? I whispered, voice breaking. Just because of money? You said you loved me, Kelsey. You said you didn't need a mansion or fancy cars. Just me and Jonas was enough. That was when I was stupid, she answered flatly. I'm not stupid anymore. That's when I heard tiny footsteps running from the bedroom. Jonas, in his Superman pajamas, eyes still sleepy, hair a mess. He'd heard us arguing. Mommy, are you leaving Daddy? Please don't go. He threw himself at Kelsey's legs, burying his face in her skirt, voice terrified. I saw Kelsey stiffen. Then she bent down, not to hug him, not to stroke his hair, just placed a hand on his shoulder and pushed him away hard. Jonas fell backward onto the floor, eyes wide, lip trembling. He didn't understand what was happening, only that his mother had just shoved him aside like something annoying. My heart shattered. I rushed over, scooped him up, and held him tight. Jonas sobbed into my chest, little fists clutching my shirt. "Where's Mommy going, Daddy? Is she mad at me?" Kelsey didn't even glance at him. She walked into the bedroom, pulled out a suitcase that had clearly been packed for a while. The zipper screamed in the silence. She put on her coat, grabbed her bag, and walked past us like we were strangers on the sidewalk. "Kelsey," I shouted, voice raw. "You can't do this. At least give me a real reason." She paused at the door, hand already on the knob. I thought she'd turn around, cry, say something, anything, to salvage this. But no. She just glanced back, lips curling into a contemptuous smirk. "Because you're not good enough for me, Garrett. It's that simple." Then the door slammed. The lock clicked like a hammer blow to my skull. Jonas kept crying, tears soaking my shirt. I sank to the floor, holding him, mind blank. The house suddenly felt cavernous and freezing. Kelsey's perfume still lingered somewhere, but she was gone, without a single look back. I stared at the divorce papers on the table. Her signature sat neatly at the bottom in the elegant handwriting that had once made my heart race when we were dating. 7 years of marriage, 7 years I thought I was building a family reduced to one sheet of white paper. I couldn't cry. I just felt fear. Bone-deep fear. Because I didn't understand. I couldn't comprehend what the hell had just happened. Last night she'd laughed at my story about a difficult customer, put food on my plate, kissed my cheek before bed, whispered, "Good night, love." And in one night, the woman I loved most in the world had turned into someone else. Cold, cruel, and utterly unrecognizable. I carried Jonas to bed. He'd cried himself out and finally fell asleep. I sat motionless on the sofa, staring out the window. Outside, snow had begun to fall lightly, blanketing the little Minneapolis street in white. I thought, maybe from now on my life would be that white too, completely stripped of any color of happiness. And what scared me most wasn't losing Kelsey, it was that I didn't know why I'd lost her. The nights that followed were pure hell. I lay on the huge bed that now held only me and Jonas curled up beside me, eyes wide open, staring into the pitch-black ceiling. Jonas fell asleep quickly. He was still little, but I couldn't close my eyes for a second. The moment I did, the image of Kelsey dragging her suitcase out the door appeared crystal clear, along with those cold eyes and her final words. "You're not good enough for me." I tossed and turned, trying to find any reasonable explanation for this collapse. Had I done something wrong? Had I missed some sign? Or had Kelsey met someone else? I went over it hundreds of times, analyzing every tiny detail from the past few months. The time she snapped about money, the time she went silent when I came home late, the time she smiled at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. But the more I thought, the more hopeless it felt. Nothing was unusual. Nothing big enough to justify such a sudden, brutal departure. I couldn't stand the uncertainty anymore. It tortured me more than the abandonment itself. I needed an answer, even the smallest clue. And the only people who might know something were Kelsey's parents, Patrick and Helen Doyle. They had always been close to their daughter. She visited them often, and maybe she had confided in them before making this decision. I told myself I had to see them. I had to get the truth. One morning, after dropping Jonas at daycare, I drove straight to the upscale neighborhood on the outskirts of Minneapolis where the Doyles had lived for decades. Their house was a massive villa with a huge garage full of luxury cars. Patrick ran a high-end auto repair and sales business. I parked my beat-up old van in front of the towering iron gate and felt out of place from the very first second. I rang the bell, heart pounding in my chest. The maid let me in, gave me a pitying look, and led me inside. Patrick Doyle, my father-in-law, 62, was sitting in the living room with a newspaper in his hands. tall, silver-haired, always in expensive shirts and a gleaming gold watch. He greeted me with the familiar coldness, the same condescending top-to-bottom glance he'd always reserved for manual laborers like me. Helen Doyle, my mother-in-law, 59, was perched on the imported leather sofa beside him. The classic proud housewife who lived for luxury, perfectly made up, dripping with jewelry. The moment I walked in, her face twisted in annoyance, as if my presence alone polluted the air. "Garrett, what are you doing here?" Patrick asked the instant I sat down, voice dry, no greeting. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "I came to ask about Kelsey. She left without warning and left divorce papers. I don't understand what's happening. Do you know why? Did she say anything to you?" Patrick folded the newspaper with a sharp snap, set it down, and looked at me with open contempt. He brushed off everything I said like it was nothing. "Kelsey has every right to leave you. She has the right to choose a husband with a real future instead of a repairman who will always have his head stuck in machines. I told her the day she married you, you were never good enough for this family." His words hit me like a slap in the face. I froze for a few seconds but forced myself to stay calm. Helen jumped in immediately, her familiar sarcastic tone I'd heard hundreds of times. "Exactly, Garrett. You come from ordinary people. Your parents were just factory workers, nothing special. We warned Kelsey from the start, but she loved you, so we let it go. Now she's realized her mistake. Divorce was only a matter of time. Stop making things difficult for her." Heat rushed to my face, but I clenched my fists under my knees and held it together. But it was so sudden. Just a few weeks ago, everything was fine. Kelsey never said anything, she just left. I only want the real reason so I can... Patrick cut me off, voice harsh and dripping with scorn. "What reason do you need? Can't you see, Garrett? You can't give my daughter the life she deserves. Kelsey is a fashion designer. She needs a big house, nice cars, a decent life, not scraping by on a repairman's salary. We don't interfere in your marriage. That's between you two. But if you keep bothering her, we'll sue for custody of Jonas. The boy needs a better environment than that run-down apartment of yours." Helen nodded vigorously and added, "That's right. Jonas is our grandson. We'll take him if you don't behave." I sat there, every word crushing my chest. Their cold answers and the open contempt on their faces made one brutal truth crystal clear. I had never been a real part of this family. From the day I married Kelsey, they had always seen me as an outsider, a poor son-in-law who didn't belong. Patrick stood up and pointed at the door. "That's enough. Go, and don't come back." I walked out of that luxurious villa feeling a humiliation I had never known. The snow was falling thicker now, the wind cutting like knives, but I felt nothing. I drove home with trembling hands on the wheel, mind in chaos. On the way, memories of the early years of our marriage flooded back like a tidal wave. I remembered the first time I met them. Patrick had looked me up and down and said outright, "What can a cheap repairman like you ever do to take care of my daughter?" Helen had mocked my working-class roots in front of everyone more times than I could count, even ridiculing my parents for never amounting to anything, just factory workers their whole lives. In the beginning, Kelsey had defended me. She would squeeze my hand and say, "Mom, Dad, don't talk about Garrett and his family like that. They're good people." But gradually, as the insults piled up, she stopped defending me. She just looked down or changed the subject. I told myself it was nothing, that our love was strong enough to overcome it. Now I understood. The marriage had been cracking for years, from tiny fractures I had chosen to ignore. Yet even all of that still didn't explain Kelsey's sudden, ruthless exit. She wasn't the type to endure in silence for so long and then explode. There had to be something bigger, deeper, a truth I hadn't touched yet. And that thought gnawed at me, terrified me. I got home. Jonas was playing alone in the living room. He ran to me and hugged my legs. "Daddy, is Mommy back yet?" I picked him up, and for the first time since Kelsey left, tears finally fell. Not from the pain of losing my wife, but from the knowledge that the search for answers had only just begun, and it was going to hurt far, far more. In the days after the divorce was finalized, I threw myself into work out of habit, but I spent far more time with Jonas. I knew the boy carried invisible wounds he was too young to name, especially since his mother had walked out of our home. Every morning I woke earlier than usual, went to the kitchen and made breakfast for the two of us, simple but the best I could manage. Father and son sat at the little table, eating, joking, trying to create whatever scraps of normalcy were still possible after an upheaval far too big for a 5-year-old. Then I dropped him at daycare and drove straight to the shop. Work and the moments with Jonas became my last two refugees. When I listened to the steady hum of engines, when I bent over tangled circuit boards, when I wrestled with a broken industrial fridge, my mind was finally pulled away from the slow, gnawing pain of abandonment. Jonas was the only reason I didn't completely collapse. I tried to make up for what Kelsey had left behind. Longer hugs, louder laughter in the late afternoons, and a presence I never thought I'd have to provide alone. On weekends, I took him to the park near the house. I pushed him on the swing, stood at the bottom of the slide to catch him, bought him the vanilla ice cream cone he loved most, just to see him smile and to remind myself that something in this world was still worth fighting for. I learned to cook simple but tasty things: hot grilled cheese sandwiches, spaghetti with meat sauce from YouTube recipes, smiley face pancakes on lazy Sunday mornings. Every night I sat beside his little bed, told a fairy tale or sang a lullaby, even though my voice was nothing special. Jonas still asked about his mom, at first with desperate, heartbroken crying, later with quiet questions that twisted my heart. "Daddy, why is Mommy gone so long?" All I could do was hold him, rub his back, and lie. "Mommy's busy with work, she'll be back soon." But deep down I knew the hole Kelsey left in him wouldn't be easy to fill, and I still didn't know when, or if, I would ever find real peace myself. Little by little, life for the two of us settled into a new rhythm. The endless sleepless nights faded. The stab of pain when I looked at the divorce papers dulled. I started smiling more with Jonas, started making plans. Maybe save up for a slightly bigger apartment or buy him a new bike. I told myself I had to be strong for my son. Then one day everything flipped upside down in an instant. That day the company sent me to fix the central cooling system at a mansion in the wealthiest neighborhood in Minneapolis, a part of the city I had never set foot in, even though I'd lived here my whole life. The address was on the outskirts, where houses sat on acres of land with private pools and garages that held 5 or 6 luxury cars. I drove the company's beat-up van up to the gate, watched it swing open automatically, and felt overwhelmed. The mansion looked like a palace. Pristine white walls, towering glass windows, perfectly manicured gardens, and luxury everywhere you looked. Marble statues, a fountain, gleaming sports cars lined up neatly. The gap between my world and the owners hit me hard. Me, a greasy repairman in a stained uniform, lugging a heavy toolbox. Walking in here felt like trespassing. The maid led me down to the basement where the central cooling unit had failed. I worked for hours lying on the floor checking pipes and circuits. Sweat-soaked, hands black with grease, but I finished on time and double-checked everything. I wiped my hands, packed up my tools, and started to leave. Then the sight in front of me stopped my heart. Kelsey was standing there. She appeared at the main entrance, dressed more lavishly than I'd ever seen her. Designer dress hugging her body, red stiletto heels, glossy wavy hair, flawless makeup like she was headed to a gala. On her arm was an elegant tall man in a tailored suit, watch sparkling under the crystal chandelier. They walked arm in arm, laughing softly, his hand possessively around her waist. I had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. Just weeks after abandoning me and our son, Kelsey was here in this lavish mansion, living the dream life she once said only existed in movies. How was this possible? She saw me at the exact same moment. Her expression shifted instantly, from joy to pure contempt. She looked me up and down, lips curling into a sneer as if my presence alone dirtied the entire place. Well, look who it is. Kelsey spoke first, voice sugary but dripping with mockery. The repair guy? What are you doing here, Garrett? Don't tell me you're the one fixing things. That old uniform, that oily stench. You really don't belong here at all. Try not to get grease on their floors. Every word cut like a knife. I stood there clutching my toolbox, face burning with humiliation and rage. The memory of her dragging her suitcase out, shoving Jonas to the floor, came rushing back. The pain I'd buried for weeks exploded. I couldn't hold it in. I took a few steps forward, voice hoarse. Kelsey, how? Why are you here? It's only been a few weeks and you're already... Who is he? Explain. She laughed loudly and clung tighter to the man as if showing him off. Explain what? My life is much better now. I don't have to put up with you anymore. Go home, Garrett. Stop bothering me. At the height of the tension, the man beside her suddenly spoke. He stared at me, then asked with a mix of surprise and delight, Garrett? Garrett Finn? You used to live on Lowry Avenue in North Minneapolis, right? 4th grade, North Elementary? I froze, trying to place the handsome, polished face. Warm brown eyes, slightly crooked smile. Something familiar. Before I could answer, he continued. It's me, Ryder. Ryder Carr. Remember? The big birthmark on my stomach? Everything came flooding back like a dam breaking. Ryder Carr, my best friend from elementary school. The shy kid who got bullied mercilessly for the huge birthmark on his belly, for wearing old clothes because his family was poor. I remembered afternoons after school when the other boys would surround him, yank up his shirt and laugh. And me, the biggest kid in class, jumping in and fighting the whole group to protect him. After that, we became inseparable, sharing lunches, playing ball after school. Then his family moved away. We lost touch and I never heard from him again. Now Ryder Carr stood in front of me, successful, the owner of this mansion, the tech billionaire the newspapers always mentioned. The sudden reunion left Kelsey frozen. Her face went white, mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Ryder looked at me, then at Kelsey, voice stunned. Kelsey, you were married to him? The air between the three of us became suffocating. Kelsey kept cutting in, voice shrill. Ryder, don't listen to him. He's just a repairman. He must have the wrong person. She tried to drag Ryder away, desperate to stop any conversation between us, terrified something would come out. I looked at Kelsey, then at Ryder, mind reeling. I walked out of that mansion in an emotional daze, only managing to turn back and say to Ryder with heavy meaning, Ryder, be careful who you keep around you. I drove home with trembling hands, not sure what I had just witnessed, but my gut screaming that the secret I had been chasing for so long was now within reach. The days that followed passed in chaos. I still threw myself into work, still dropped Jonas at daycare, still forced smiles from my son so he wouldn't see his father falling apart inside. But at night I lay wide awake, wondering whether I should reach out to Ryder or just let it go and pretend we'd never crossed paths again. I wanted nothing more to do with Kelsey, yet the pain of betrayal kept smoldering. Then one Saturday afternoon, while I was fixing a neighbor's broken washing machine in our apartment building, there was a knock at the door. Jonas ran to open it and shouted, Daddy, there's a strange man. I wiped my hands and stepped out and nearly dropped the screwdriver. Ryder Carr stood in the doorway of my tiny apartment, wearing a simple jacket instead of an expensive suit, face tense, dark circles under his eyes. Nothing like the calm, polished billionaire I'd seen days earlier. He had come alone. No driver, no assistant, no luxury car parked outside. Just Ryder, a man who owned an empire, standing quietly in the middle of a working-class apartment complex where people like me lived. Garrett, can I come in? He asked, voice a little hoarse, eyes darting around as if afraid someone was watching. I was so stunned I stood frozen for a few seconds, then quickly invited him in. Yeah, come on in. Jonas, go play in your room, buddy. Jonas obediently scampered off, and I led Ryder to the worn-out sofa in the living room. The apartment was small, the furniture simple, paint peeling in places, worlds away from his mansion. But Ryder didn't seem to notice. He sat down, hands clasped tight like he was holding himself together. We sat in silence for a moment, just looking at each other. Then Ryder spoke first. "Thank you for the warning the other day. I needed to talk to you." I nodded and poured him a glass of tap water, the only thing I had to offer a guest. We started talking and the old childhood warmth came rushing back instantly. Ryder gave a sad smile. "Man, after all these years you're still the same, still that big, gentle guy with the kind grin." I smiled too, when memories of our childhood suddenly felt painfully vivid. I remembered 4th grade. Ryder cornered by a gang of 5th graders getting bullied. He just stood there crying, shrinking into himself, too scared to fight back. I happened to walk by, saw it, and charged in swinging. I took on the whole group alone, ended up with a bloody nose and bruises, but I protected him. From that day on, we were inseparable best friends. Whenever kids teased him about his big birthmark, I stood up for him, sometimes fighting until I got suspended. Once I got suspended for 3 days after breaking a bully's tooth for tormenting Ryder. When I got home, my dad whipped me, but Ryder ran over to apologize to my father. He used to say, "Garrett, you're my hero." Back then, protecting Ryder felt natural. He was gentle. He needed someone to watch his back. Those warm memories made me smile, but then I noticed Ryder looking at me with confusion, eyes red, struggling to find words for something hard to say. "Garrett, I didn't just come to catch up. I need to ask about Kelsey." I stiffened but nodded. "Go ahead. Ask whatever you want." Ryder took a deep breath and started talking. He had known Kelsey for 3 years. She approached him at a fashion event, introduced herself as an independent designer struggling in an unhappy marriage. She told him she'd been divorced for a long time, that her ex-husband was a failure. Abusive, addicted, every terrible thing I had never been. Kelsey pursued Ryder aggressively, texting, dating, crying on his shoulder until he fell for her. They moved in together and Ryder had been thinking about marriage. I calmly told him my side. 7 years of marriage, her sudden departure just weeks ago, the cold divorce papers, the way she shoved Jonas away. Ryder's face changed as he listened. Shock, then stunned silence, then pale as if someone had thrown ice water on him. Just a few weeks ago. But Kelsey told me she'd been divorced for 2 years. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and showed me message after message, photos of them together. Kelsey beaming next to him in New York and Alaska, trips I never knew about. Call logs, texts. She had been chasing Ryder for 3 whole years, the same years I was killing myself, working overtime, sleeping in the van to earn extra money, the years I thought I was building a home. I sat frozen. The truth of her infidelity hit me like a punch in the face. Kelsey had been cheating on me for 3 years while I was doing everything I could for our family. The nights she said she was meeting design clients, she was with Ryder. The times she complained about money, it was because she wanted more, wanted the rich life Ryder could give her. And the worst part, our son. Jonas had been abandoned by a mother who'd had someone else all along. Ryder exploded with rage when I showed him the still fresh divorce papers. He slammed his fist on the table, eyes bloodshot. "She lied to me. I thought she was the victim of a terrible marriage. I wanted to save her, and turns out I was just a tool." He clutched his head, voice trembling. 3 years. I spent so much on her. Houses, cars, trips. I was such an idiot. I put a hand on his shoulder, even though I was hurting too. "I don't blame you, Ryder. You didn't know. You were always like that, trusting, needing someone to look out for you." I didn't blame Ryder. He was a victim just like me. But something darker clicked in my mind. Kelsey hadn't just cheated. She had planned everything, manipulated both of us with cold calculation. The cruelty she showed me and Jonas might not even be the worst of it. I looked at him seriously. "You need to dig deeper. Be careful. Kelsey, she might have more schemes. Don't let her pull you in any further." Ryder nodded, eyes dark. "I will. Thank you, Garrett. After all these years, when you're still protecting me." He left and I sat motionless in the little apartment. The truth hurt like hell, but it finally explained everything. Kelsey hadn't just grown tired of being poor, she had been plotting for years. And now I knew the real storm was only beginning. The weeks that followed, I lived in a strange state, simmering anger mixed with numbness. I still went to work, still picked up and dropped off Jonas, still smiled for my son. But at night I stared at the ceiling, wondering what Kelsey was doing right now in Ryder's mansion. I didn't contact Ryder again, didn't want any news about Kelsey. I just wanted to forget, to move on, even though my heart was still full of unhealed cuts. Then one Wednesday afternoon, as I was picking Jonas up from daycare and cooking spaghetti for the two of us, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered and a hoarse, urgent voice came through. "Garrett, it's me, Ryder. I need to see you. Right now. Can you come?" I heard his heavy breathing. "Yeah. What's going on?" "Not over the phone. Come to my office. I'll tell security to let you in." I asked the neighbor to watch Jonas and drove straight to Ryder's corporate headquarters in downtown Minneapolis. A gleaming glass tower, silver logo sparkling in the late afternoon sun. Ryder was waiting on the top floor, office door already open. I walked in and saw him sitting there. Shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, hair a mess, clear signs of a sleepless night. He stood, gave me a tight hug, then pointed to the chair. "Sit. You need to see this." On the desk were stacks of thick folders, photographs, bank statements, transfer documents. Ryder pushed one folder toward me, voice shaking with rage and exhaustion. "After your warning the other day, I hired the best private investigator in the state. I told them to dig up everything Kelsey ever said or did, and God, Garrett, I can't believe what they found." I flipped through the pages, hands growing ice cold. A joint account Kelsey had convinced Ryder to open for shared real estate investments. Over $7 million transferred into it in 2 years. Every cent had been gradually withdrawn by Kelsey and moved to private accounts in her name and her mother's. 2 prime lots in the wealthiest part of St. Paul, ownership papers listing only Kelsey Doyle, purchased with Ryder's money under the pretext of joint projects. Credit card statements, designer handbags, wedding dress fittings, even a deposit for a Maldives wedding, all paid with Ryder's money. And the most horrifying? A chain of emails and notes from a financial attorney in St. Paul whom Kelsey and her parents had met at least 8 times in the past year. The contents: how to set up a sham marital trust so that upon marriage Ryder's assets would automatically transfer to Kelsey, how to draft coercive wills, and a handwritten note: if spouse dies unexpectedly, entire estate transfers to wife plus $20 million life insurance payout. The blood in my veins seemed to freeze. My hands shook so hard the paper slipped and fell onto the desk. This was no longer just infidelity or betrayal. This was a meticulously planned, organized, years-long scheme to seize assets. Kelsey and her parents had calculated every step. Make Ryder fall in love, rush him into marriage, transfer everything into their hands, and if necessary, eliminate him to take it all. Ryder slammed his fist on the desk, voice breaking. "I almost died, Garrett. I almost died because I trusted her. She kept asking about my family's heart disease history, told me to get a full checkup, suggested I increase my life insurance. I thought she actually cared." I stared at him, then at the documents, mind reeling. The woman I had once loved, slept beside every night, sworn to spend my life with, was capable of this kind of cruelty. She hadn't just betrayed me and Jonas. She had been willing to kill for money. And her parents, the same people who mocked me for being poor, were her accomplices, the masterminds behind the plan. We sat in heavy silence for a long time, only the sound of ragged breathing. One man whose family had been destroyed by betrayal. One man who had nearly lost his life and everything he'd built. Both victims of the same woman and her family. Ryder spoke first, voice now harder. "I'm not letting this slide, Garrett. I'm suing. I'm dragging everything into the light." I looked at him, thought of Jonas, who still asked about his mom every night, and nodded slowly. I'm with you, not for revenge, but we can't let them hurt anyone else. Ryder gripped my hand tightly, just like when we were kids and I used to grab his hand to run from bullies. Thank you. This time it's my turn to get justice. For both of us. In that moment, surrounded by a chaotic pile of evidence of crime, Ryder and I both understood one thing. It was time for Kelsey and her family to face the real consequences of what they had done. No mercy, no compromise. The storm I had sensed for so long had finally arrived, and this time I wasn't running. The days that followed were suffocatingly tense. Ryder worked non-stop, coordinating with his legal team and investigators to gather more evidence and strengthen the case. He had people tailing every move Kelsey and her parents made, making sure not a single detail slipped through. I kept living my ordinary life, going to work, taking care of Jonas, but in my head those documents were always there, the cold words about if the spouse dies unexpectedly. I barely slept, but this time it wasn't grief. It was a cold, smoldering rage waiting for the day it could explode. One evening, Ryder called me to his office. The room was tidy again, but his eyes were still red from lack of sleep. He slid an elegant invitation across the desk. Launch event for the new automation project next week. Partners, investors, media, the entire Minnesota elite will be there. I want to expose everything right then and there. I looked at him, heart racing. Publicly like that? Won't it hurt the company? Ryder gave a cold smile. If it does, so be it. I'd rather lose a few contracts than let fraudsters walk free. And I want them to walk straight into the trap themselves. The plan was drawn up in detail. Ryder sent personal VIP invitations to Kelsey and her parents. They took the bait immediately. Kelsey sent sweet texts. Patrick called to thank him. Helen bragged to her friends. They thought Ryder was still blindly in love with Kelsey, still ready to give her the lavish wedding of her dreams. They had no idea the storm waiting ahead. I was also invited by Ryder, and I accepted, not for revenge, though I won't deny a flicker of satisfaction at the thought of their downfall, but because I wanted to look Kelsey in the eye one last time and see her realize that not everyone can be fooled forever. The day of the event came faster than I expected. The grand ballroom of Minneapolis's most luxurious hotel glittered with crystal chandeliers, red carpet, and tables worth billions. Hundreds of people in tuxedos and evening gowns, the clink of champagne glasses, polite laughter. I wore the only suit Ryder had bought for me, the first time in my life I'd ever worn anything this expensive, but I still felt out of place among the elite. I stepped into the main hall and immediately saw them. Patrick Doyle stood there, suit perfectly pressed, shaking hands with businessmen. Helen beside him, dripping in jewelry, fake smiling at the society ladies. And Kelsey, in a stunning red evening gown that cost a fortune. Hair swept up, lipstick flawless, surrounded by admirers as if she already belonged to this world. She laughed brightly, champagne in hand, flirting with some executive. Then they saw me. Patrick spotted me first. His face darkened instantly. Helen's mouth fell open before curling into a sneer. Kelsey turned, and her eyes, God, still that same contemptuous look from the day at the mansion. They walked straight toward me, not caring who heard. Well, well, Patrick spoke first, loud enough for people nearby to turn. Look who decided to show up. The broke repairman. What are you doing here? Who let you in? Your presence alone is soiling the room. Helen smirked in her familiar sarcastic tone. Exactly, Garrett. Still the same pathetic failure of a son-in-law. Rented suit? You look ridiculous. You have no business being here. Go back to fixing refrigerators. Kelsey stepped closest, her perfume hitting me like a slap. She looked me up and down and laughed scornfully. You never change, do you, Garrett? Still smelling like grease, still looking like a country bumpkin? Did you sneak in here looking for a job? Standing in this room just embarrasses me. Get lost. Don't ruin my night. Their insults rained down like hail. People around us started staring and whispering. In the past, I would have lowered my head and walked away, swallowing the humiliation. But not this time. I stood tall, looked Kelsey dead in the eye, and spoke with a calm that surprised even me. Those words don't hurt me anymore, Kelsey, because I already know the truth about you. She opened her mouth to fire back. Just then Ryder appeared. Applause erupted as he took the stage in an impeccable black suit, microphone in hand, professional smile in place. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began his speech about the new project, transparency, and business ethics. Then suddenly he stopped, looked straight into the audience, his gaze landing on me. "And today I'd like to introduce someone very special. The man who saved my life with just one sentence. Garrett Finn, would you join me up here?" Hundreds of eyes turned to me. I hesitated for a split second, then summoned my courage and walked onto the stage amid whispers. Kelsey went pale. Patrick clenched his fists. Helen clutched her chest. Ryder placed a hand on my shoulder and faced the crowd. "Before we talk about the project, I need to share a story about transparency. For the past 3 years, I have been systematically defrauded by the person I trusted most." The giant screen behind us lit up. Document after document appeared in stark clarity. Bank transfers of millions into Kelsey's accounts, deeds listing only her name, emails and recordings of meetings with a financial attorney. Ensure asset control in case of spouse's death. A detailed plan, seduction, rushed marriage, asset transfer, elimination, names in bold red, Kelsey Doyle, Patrick Doyle, Helen Doyle, next to the words financial fraud and attempted murder conspiracy. The room fell dead silent for several seconds, then exploded into chaos. Gasps, shouts, camera flashes firing nonstop. Kelsey turned ashen, legs shaking so badly she nearly collapsed and had to grab a chair. Helen covered her mouth, face white. Patrick shot to his feet, face purple with rage and fear. They charged toward the stage. Security held them back. "Ryder, you've got it all wrong," Kelsey shrieked, voice cracking. "It's just a misunderstanding." Patrick roared, "You're making this up. I'll sue you for everything." Helen sobbed. "My daughter would never. It was just pressure. We only wanted what was best for her." But the evidence was overwhelming, airtight. No excuse held water. Ryder looked down at them, voice ice cold. "The case has already been turned over to federal investigators. You'll be reading about it in the papers very soon. Thank you all for listening." I looked at Kelsey one last time. She stared back, eyes filled with tears, but not remorse, only terror. I said nothing. I simply turned, walked off the stage, and quietly left the hall as stunned silence fell over the crowd. Outside, a cold Minneapolis drizzle was falling. I stood in the rain for a long time, letting the water soak the expensive suit. I didn't feel triumph, only relief. They had dug their own grave, and now they were going to fall into it. The news exploded that very night. Videos from the event were uploaded everywhere with screaming headlines. "Billionaire Ryder Carr publicly unmasks gold-digging girlfriend at $1 million gala." "Doyle family's murder for money plot exposed." Within hours, the hashtag KELSEYDOYLEFRAUD was trending across every platform. Netizens dug up her entire past, photos flaunting her lavish new life, old posts about deserving better, now the most painful cell phones imaginable. Ryder moved like lightning. The very next morning, he cut Kelsey off completely, blocked her number, changed the mansion locks, canceled her supplementary cards, terminated every financial project tied to the Doyle family. Fashion brands she had collaborated with immediately dropped her, issuing statements terminating cooperation indefinitely for ethical reasons. Overnight, Kelsey went from design muse to national scammer. Patrick Doyle fared no better. His luxury car garage, his pride and joy for decades, lost customers like leaves in autumn. The wealthy who once brought Lamborghinis and Ferraris now turned away. Someone even taped a sign to the door. "I don't want my car in the same place as would-be murderers." The Minneapolis business clubs quietly removed him from every membership and weekend golf outing. Helen was silently erased from the neighborhood ladies' club. No more tea party invitations, neighbors nodding politely, then crossing the street. No one said it out loud, but everyone made it clear. The Doyle family was now toxic. Their downfall was unstoppable. The mansion was foreclosed for unpaid loans. Luxury cars were towed away. Bank accounts frozen pending investigation. Kelsey spiraled into real panic. She called Ryder hundreds of times a day, sent pleading texts, cried, threatened suicide. Ryder blocked everything, never replied once. In desperation, she turned to me. Messages, calls, even standing outside my apartment building at midnight screaming my name. I blocked her too. I had nothing left to say. Then one Saturday afternoon, while Jonas was playing with Lego in the living room, there was frantic pounding at the door. I opened it and all three of them stormed in like a hurricane. Kelsey led the charge, hair a mess, eyes swollen from crying and sleepless nights, wearing an old coat that looked completely wrong on her. Patrick and Helen followed, gaunt, clothes rumpled. They didn't wait for an invitation, they barged in, pointing and cursing. It's all because of you," Kelsey snarled, voice breaking. "You were jealous of me, so you teamed up with Ryder to destroy me, right? I've lost everything. Everything. Because of you." Patrick jabbed a trembling finger. "You bastard. I lost my garage, my house, everything. Just because you wouldn't leave my daughter alone." Helen sobbed. "You're cruel, Garrett. You destroyed our whole family." I stood still, Jonas clinging terrified to my leg. Kelsey lunged at me, eyes wild, nails raking my face and chest, hitting and screaming. "It's your fault. All your fault. If you'd been rich enough, good enough, I wouldn't have had to do this. You made me suffer for 7 years. That's why I did it. You ruined my life." I caught her wrists, held them firmly without striking back, just enough to stop her. "Stop it, Kelsey," I said, voice calmer than I felt. "If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police for trespassing and assault." They kept screaming, cursing, blaming. I took a deep breath and spoke slowly, word by word. "Your collapse isn't because of me. It's because you chose greed over love. You chose lies over honesty. You chose murder for money over honest work. For 7 years, you treated me like trash, mocked me for being poor, looked down on my parents for working hard. Kelsey, you abandoned your own son because he got in the way of your plans. You've lost everything not because I took revenge, but because you dug your own grave. And that grave is as deep as your greed." The three of them went silent. Patrick lowered his head, shoulders shaking. Rage or shame, I couldn't tell. Helen opened her mouth, but no words came, tears streaking through the thick makeup now smeared across her face. Kelsey stood frozen, arms limp, eyes empty as if the life had been sucked out of her. Her lips moved soundlessly. They left looking like walking corpses. Kelsey glanced back one last time. No contempt, no anger, only a terrifying emptiness. But their nightmare wasn't over. Ryder filed the lawsuit. Mountains of airtight evidence. The trial lasted 3 months, but the outcome was clear from day one. The prosecutor charged all three with major felonies: large-scale financial fraud, conspiracy to seize assets, and conspiracy to cause harm for profit in the event of the victim's death. I testified. Ryder testified. The investigators testified. Bank employees, the financial attorney, even Ryder's former housekeeper took the stand and confirmed Kelsey had asked how to make an accident look natural. Kelsey claimed it was just ideas never carried out, that I only wanted a better life. Patrick said I only wanted the best for my daughter. Helen sobbed, I just followed my husband and child. No one believed them. The jury took 2 hours to return guilty verdicts on all counts. Sentencing came on a cold March afternoon. Kelsey Doyle Finn, 14 years imprisonment, no parole. Patrick Doyle, 8 years. Helen Doyle, 5 years as an accomplice and for aiding concealment. Every asset tied to the fraudulent scheme was seized. The 2 land parcels, bank accounts, jewelry, cars, everything. They were ordered to pay Ryder massive restitution, an amount that left the Doyle family completely bankrupt. Their remaining properties auctioned off, leaving them with nothing but the clothes on their backs. When the gavel fell, Kelsey collapsed to the courtroom floor, screaming and sobbing like a madwoman. Patrick sat motionless, staring into nothing. Helen fainted and had to be carried out. Security led them away in shackles, the clank of chains echoing. Through the bars of the prison transport, Kelsey looked back at me one last time. No pride left, just a thin, broken woman who had aged 10 years in a few months. I held Jonas tight as we left the courthouse. He asked, "Daddy, where did Mommy go for so long?" I kissed his hair and answered, "Mommy has to go far away for a very long time, buddy. But Daddy will always be here with you." I didn't feel joy at their imprisonment. I only felt justice. The price they paid was the price they chose the day they decided to betray, to lie, and to plot murder. They sowed the wind. Now they reap the whirlwind, and the whirlwind spared no one. 2 weeks after the trial, Ryder showed up at my apartment. Jonas opened the door and squealed, "Daddy, it's Uncle Ryder." Ryder grinned, ruffled the boy's hair, and handed him a brand new Lego set. I invited him in and poured hot coffee. It was still the same small old apartment, but now a little tidier and warmer thanks to the share of the restitution Ryder had insisted I take from the settlement. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. Ryder looked at me for a long time, then spoke in a low, warm voice. "Garrett, I came to say thank you, not just for saving me from that death trap this time, but for back then too. You protected me when I was nothing, a shy kid with an ugly birthmark. And now you saved me again. I owe you for the rest of my life." I shook my head with an awkward smile. "Don't say that. I only did what was right." Ryder leaned forward, eyes shining. "No, you don't get it. In this business world, people sell each other out for a tiny contract. But you, honest, steadfast, responsible. Those things are rare. I've watched you these past months. No bitterness, no personal revenge, just wanting justice and to protect your son. That's exactly the kind of person this company needs." Then he said it straight. "Come work with me, Garrett. Quit the repair job. I'll give you a proper position in the technical division. You and Jonas deserve a better life." I was stunned. I looked around the cramped apartment at Jonas playing Lego in the corner, then back at Ryder. I laughed, a sad, self-mocking laugh. "Ryder, are you serious? I barely finished high school. My only skill is fixing refrigerators and washing machines. Your company does high-tech automation, robotics. I'd be like the blind man groping an elephant. I don't want to embarrass you." Ryder shook his head hard and grabbed my hand. "Listen to me. Everything you lack, degrees, specialized knowledge, can be learned. Character can't be taught. I believe in you. Give me and yourself a chance." I turned him down a few more times. The inferiority complex was carved deep into my bones. A poor repairman despised by his ex-wife, humiliated by her parents. I was terrified of failing, of being laughed at by colleagues, of not being able to provide for Jonas if I lost the job. But that night, lying next to my sleeping son, watching his little arms clutch his stuffed bear, I thought, if I stay afraid forever, Jonas will grow up just like me. Resigned, deprived, looked down on. No, I won't let my son go through that. The next morning, I called Ryder. "I'm in." The first days at the company were a living nightmare. I started at the very bottom of the technical department, maintenance technician. My co-workers were all college graduates, master's degrees, speaking a mix of English and jargon that sounded like a foreign language. They were polite, but I saw the pity in their eyes when I didn't know basic terms. I Googled everything, stayed at the office until midnight reading manuals and watching YouTube tutorials. Some nights I got home at 2 a.m. Jonas was already asleep. I kissed his forehead and kept studying. I never said no to any task. Cleaning server racks, running cables, fixing the accounting department's broken printer. I asked endless questions, took meticulous notes, practiced on the test systems. Once I fried an experimental circuit board and had to pay for it out of pocket, I gritted my teeth, paid, then went home and started over. But I didn't give up. My hard work started getting noticed. My direct manager, an Indian engineer named Raj, first gave me only menial jobs. Then he saw I stayed latest, asked the most questions, and began handing me harder tasks. I discovered I had an advantage, real-world experience. Years of fixing appliances had taught me to spot system faults intuitively and stay calm in emergencies. While the younger engineers were brilliant in theory but panicked at real breakdowns, I could find the root cause faster. 3 months later, I successfully led the overhaul of a partner factory's cooling system, saving the company nearly $500,000. Raj slapped my shoulder. "Garrett, you're a diamond in the rough." Ryder watched from a distance, never interfering, only dropping by occasionally to check in. He smiled with pride every time he heard my progress reports. Little by little, I earned a real place in the company. From a repairman who took every shift to scrape by, I became someone colleagues trusted. Steady income, easier life. I could provide for Jonas without counting every penny. For the first time in years, I looked ahead and saw a bright future, not just for me, but for my son. A year later, I was promoted to technical team leader. 2 years after that, I was put in charge of the entire maintenance solutions division for major projects. My salary was 10 times what I'd earned fixing appliances. I bought a spacious downtown apartment with a room just for Jonas and a balcony overlooking the Mississippi. He went to a good school, took basketball and piano lessons, things I'd never dared dream of. One evening over dinner, just the two of us, Ryder told me, "I've never regretted that decision. You're not just the best person in your department. You're the friend I'm proudest of." I smiled at him. "Thank you for believing in a repairman." Ryder shook his head. "No. Thank you for proving that character is what matters most." Slowly, I built a solid place for myself. No one saw me as an outsider anymore. I grew more confident, spoke more fluently, was even invited to speak at technical conferences as from refrigerator repairman to head of technical solutions. Jonas bragged to his friends, "My dad's a superhero engineer. My life and my son's are completely different now. No more worrying about every gallon of milk or every meal. No more being looked down on for being poor. Only the peace I once thought I'd never have." And it all began with one decision. Daring to step out of my comfort zone, daring to believe I was worth something. It turns out the chance to change your life doesn't always come from degrees or money. It comes from an old friend who believes in you, and from the courage to reach out and take it. Those years flew by like the blink of an eye. From an entry-level technician, I gradually became a key figure in the company. In my 4th year, Ryder appointed me Director of Technical Solutions, a position I wouldn't have dared dream of on my first day. I now led more than 40 engineers, signed contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars each year, and flew to Germany, Japan, and South Korea to implement projects. Every time I stood presenting to the board, I still remembered the trembling feeling of holding a microphone on day one. But now I spoke fluently, confidently, and people listened. The high salary allowed me to buy a penthouse in downtown Minneapolis. Top floor, huge windows overlooking the glittering Mississippi, 3 bedrooms, open kitchen, a dedicated playroom for Jonas. My son had his own study corner with an oak desk and a top-of-the-line computer, bookshelves overflowing from Harry Potter to children's science books. I no longer had to count every penny for milk. Jonas attended an international school, took swimming, piano, and Japanese lessons, things I once only admired from afar. I grew more confident and self-assured. The emotional scars from my failed marriage slowly healed. They no longer ached when I thought of Kelsey. I stopped flinching at the sound of a key in the lock, stopped dreaming of her dragging her suitcase away. I had truly let go. Jonas remained the center of my universe. He grew like a weed, now 13, almost as tall as me, voice starting to deepen. We lived in a home filled with love. No matter how packed my schedule, I always made time for him. Driving to extra classes, watching his games, sitting for hours listening to his school stories. Our evenings cooking together were still the most precious moments. Me in an apron, Jonas standing on a stool stirring spaghetti sauce. Both of us laughing when flour ended up all over our faces. After dinner, we did homework together. I helped with math, he taught me Fortnite, then lay on the sofa telling each other stories before bed. Jonas sometimes asked, "Do you ever miss Mom?" I just smiled. "I do, but I'm happier having you." Ryder remained an irreplaceable part of our lives. He visited regularly, bringing pizza or Timberwolves tickets, playing chess with Jonas, then dragging me out to the balcony for a beer. Every time he looked at me and shook his head in wonder, I still can't believe the kid who kept getting suspended for fighting is now the guy in a suit running an entire department. "You make me so proud, Garrett." I just grinned and clapped his shoulder. "I'm just doing my best." Life became so stable that sometimes I had to pinch myself to make sure it wasn't a dream. No more financial burdens, no more fear of being looked down on. Only work I loved, a son I adored, and true friends. I could stand in the heart of Minneapolis with my head held high, no longer feeling like an outsider. Then one Friday in November, I received a letter from Shakopee Women's Prison, a single short line in shaky handwriting. "It's Kelsey, I want to see you." I sat holding the letter for a long time. Jonas asked, "Who's it from, Dad?" I just smiled. "Someone from the past. I'll go see her and tell you about it later." On the appointed day, I wore a simple shirt and drove to the prison with a heavy heart. The visiting room was cold as a freezer, harsh fluorescent lights shining down on an old chipped wooden table. A thick glass partition separated us with a wall-mounted telephone on each side. A few seconds later, the metal door opened. Kelsey was led in, walking slowly. Her face was so gaunt I almost didn't recognize the woman who had once been my wife. The proud woman in the red dress and perfect lipstick was now thin and hollow-eyed, hair cropped short, wearing gray prison scrubs, no makeup, looking 10 years older. She sat down, picked up the receiver with trembling hands. "Garrett." Her voice was hoarse, as if she hadn't spoken in days. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, said nothing, just waited. Kelsey stared at the table for a long time, then looked up, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry. Sorry for everything I did to you, to Jonas, to Ryder. I was completely wrong. Greed blinded me. Delusions of wealth clouded my mind. I was never worthy of being your wife or Jonas's mother. I just wanted to say this late apology." I listened. No anger, no resentment, only a distant pity for someone who had once been everything to me. "Kelsey," I said slowly, voice calm. "I let go of all of it a long time ago. Holding on to the past only hurt me and Jonas more. I didn't come here to forgive or to judge. I came to close the book completely. I wish you well in your rehabilitation. As for me, I have a new life now, better than anything you ever promised." Kelsey broke down sobbing, head collapsing onto the table. I quietly hung up the receiver and stood. I didn't look back. Outside, rare winter sunlight was breaking through the Minneapolis sky. I took a deep breath, feeling as if I had finally shed the last piece of the past. I called Jonas. "All done, buddy. How about steak tonight? Just a little celebration. Not because we beat anyone, but because we found ourselves again and have a life fuller than anything we ever lost." That evening in the cozy Riverside restaurant, Jonas clinked his apple juice glass against mine, grinning ear to ear. "Cheers, Dad. You're the best man in the world." I hugged him tight, eyes stinging. Yes, my new life had truly begun. Not the day Kelsey left, but the day I decided that pain would no longer define me. And now I have everything I ever dreamed of: a real home, an amazing son, and a heart that is completely free. Looking back on my long journey, from the rundown apartment that smelled of grease to the bright penthouse lit by city lights, I realize my life has become living proof of many things I once never believed. First, I learned that true peace does not come from clinging to someone who wants to leave. I used to think that if Kelsey had stayed, if I had tried harder, earned more money, our family would have been happy. I was wrong. Peace only came when I had the courage to let go of people who no longer belonged with me. Kelsey never truly belonged to me. She belonged to greed, to illusions of wealth. When I let go, I didn't lose a wife. I found myself again. The pain Kelsey left behind, the cold divorce papers, the 3-year betrayal, the horrifying plot against Ryder's life once convinced me I would never get back up. But now I see clearly. Pain is sometimes life's most cleverly disguised gift. It hurts. It tears the heart apart. But it is also what pushes us out of toxic comfort zones, forces us to walk, to grow, and ultimately leads us to where we truly belong. Without that pain, I would still be the resigned repairman, scraping by under the contempt of my wife's family, never daring to dream of heading a division in a billion-dollar corporation. Kelsey's brutal betrayal once crushed me so completely I didn't want to live. I sat on the cold floor holding a crying Jonas, wondering what I was worth. But that very betrayal opened a future I could never have imagined. It pushed me into that fateful encounter with Ryder, thrust me into a new world, forced me to learn, to strive, to become a better version of myself. Sometimes the person who hurts us the most unwittingly opens the biggest door for us. The moment I truly began to grow up was not when I got promoted or bought a new home. It was the moment I stood up to protect Jonas and myself, when I refused to keep harassing the Doyle family, when I accepted Ryder's offer despite trembling with self-doubt, when I stayed at the office until midnight studying even though I was exhausted. That was when I realized worthiness is not something others grant you. It is something you seize with your own actions. I deserved a better life not because I became rich, but because I knew I was worth more than the insults of the past. Ryder appeared at exactly the right time, like a beautiful reminder from the universe. Kindness is never wasted. A good deed I do today can lie dormant for decades and then suddenly return to save me on the day I need it most. I protected Ryder from bullies simply because it felt wrong to stand by. I never thought about karma or fate. Yet that very act brought Ryder back into my life and gave me a life-changing opportunity no one else could have offered. I teach Jonas this every day. You don't do good to be rewarded. You do it because that's who you are, and life knows how to give back. I also learned that a person's true value lies not in background or wealth. The Doyles despised me because I was poor, because I was just a repairman. Kelsey left me because I had no future. But the very things they scorned, calloused hands from honest work, unwavering integrity despite poverty, the discipline to study late into the night, were what lifted me to heights they could only dream of. Money can be lost, status can collapse, but character, discipline, and honesty, no one can take those away. They are priceless assets, and they saved me. My journey shows that life sometimes tests us not to break us, but to help us transform. Every time I thought I couldn't go on, the sleepless nights after Kelsey left, the humiliation in front of her parents, the early months at the company when people saw me as the country bumpkin. Those very trials forged me into someone tougher, wiser, more patient. Life doesn't come to punish us, it comes to shape us into the best version of ourselves. I learned that forgiveness is not about making the other person feel better. I forgave Kelsey not because she deserved it, but because holding on to resentment only weighed me down. When I let go, I became free. When I sat across from her in prison and said, "I let go a long time ago," I wasn't lying. I truly was free. Forgiveness is the gift we give ourselves, but the deepest, strongest driving force has always been Jonas. Love for my son pulled me through every storm. On the nights I wanted to give up, one look at Jonas asleep was enough to make me stand again. I realized being a father isn't about giving your child a perfect life. No life is perfect. Being a father is showing your child how a man rises from imperfection, how to turn pain into strength, how to stay kind even when treated cruelly. I want Jonas to grow up knowing a real man protects his family, works hard, and never lets greed cloud his heart. Those stormy years taught me one simple truth. Kindness is the foundation of true happiness, while greed and deceit will sooner or later dig their own graves. Kelsey, Patrick, Helen, they once had everything: money, status, glamorous appearances. But greed turned them into prisoners who lost all honor and freedom. And I, who once lost everything, found real happiness simply through kindness, perseverance, and love. The old Garrett Finn, the repairman abandoned by his wife on a snowy night, has been completely reborn from that very pain. I am no longer a victim. I am a survivor, a victor, a proud father, a trusted friend, a respected department head. And if this story reaches you, you sitting there with a broken heart from betrayal, abandonment, or contempt, here is my sincerest message. Life can take so much from you: loved ones, money, dignity, even faith in humanity. But only when you give up on yourself do you truly lose everything. Don't give up on yourself. Stand up the way I once stood up from the cold floor holding my crying son. Keep learning the way I studied until my eyes burned. Stay kind the way I was kind to Ryder with no expectation of reward. Forgive to set yourself free. And love your children because they are the most beautiful reason to become a better version of yourself. The pain will pass. The storm will clear. And when the sky is bright again, you will find you have soared far higher than the place you were once dragged down to. I, Garrett Finn, lived to prove it, and so will you.